Last week we did a speculative look interpreting the geologic history of the Minecraft world using the cross-section method. Long story short, I received a noticeable number of comments saying something along the lines of, "I barely understood this, but cool anyway." Well, that's my fault. I was in a bit of a time crunch and trying to roll it out as quickly as possible, kind of like I'm doing right now. So instead of explaining all the terms, I just kind of flashed them on the screen for viewers to pause and read. Anyways, a lot of you said you didn't understand, but after today, you will understand, hopefully. If it gets enough interest, this will be the first video in a new series explaining geology through Minecraft. We'll be starting with stratigraphy, which is wildly out of order for how you teach geology, but it's most relevant to last week's video. Let's begin. Stratigraphy is going to be one of the most useful branches of geology when looking at Minecraft. It is the study of layers. Specifically, stratigraphy looks at the relative position of strata, layers, and what it can tell us about the history of a formation. A formation is a distinct unit or group of units. A unit is almost the same thing, but smaller. Usually formations are made of units. Units are defined by distinct characteristics, which can involve rock type but doesn't have to. Contacts are what we call the boundary lines between units. Now, to re-explain the basic principles of stratigraphy from last time, I'll turn it over to me. Actually, before that, stratigraphy mostly applies to sedimentary layers, so just for reference, sedimentary rocks are one of the three main rock types that we'll talk a lot more about in a different video. They are formed from large accumulation and compaction of sediment, which is like sand, mud, dirt, stuff like that. Generally, particles that would settle out of a liquid. We can cover the specifics next time, but we want to stay big picture for this video. Just know, sedimentary rocks are deposited, like pouring concrete. Well, hello everyone. It's me still. I'm here to talk to you about the laws of stratigraphy that I just mentioned. I figured to save time it would be a lot easier just to explain it by example. And of course, what better place to explain the laws of stratigraphy than here in the Badlands biome, where we can see lots of strata or layers. So again, the first law of stratigraphy is going to be superposition, which means that older units are the ones that were deposited first, so are therefore going to be on the bottom of sections. So for example here, we can see that the Badlands, we have lots of different layers, and these are of course all sedimentary, probably. So they were deposited. And because this one is on the bottom of the section, let's just say this red one right here, it's on the bottom of the section, which means that it is older than all of these other ones that would have been deposited on top of it. And of course we do have this red again, which really could just be like what we would call a repeating unit. So the conditions that deposited this red unit would be the same to deposit this red unit, but they are not the same unit. They were deposited at different times. So again, superposition, pretty simple. If it's on the bottom, it is generally older, relatively speaking. The next one is going to be lateral continuity. So if we just fly right over here, lateral continuity states that when these layers are deposited, they are deposited over a wide area, and they will continue unless they get interrupted or broken. And this is a great example right here. We have these hoodoos. So a good example of lateral continuity is that, let's just take this yellow layer here. So this yellow layer would have been deposited across this whole Badlands area, and it originally would have been deposited as just one sheet, completely flat, like this. So the Badlands, these are the eroded Badlands, conveniently, so that this would have been eroded, and that this yellow, or any of these layers, would have continued across this whole area before being eroded. So meaning that this yellow portion here was originally continuous through to here and over there, but this over time was eroded. Now I messed up the order a little bit, but the second law I meant to say was original horizontality, which means that when layers are deposited, they are originally deposited flat, or conforming to the terrain, but in Minecraft's case, of course, flat. They are still in the orientation in which they were originally deposited. Minecraft doesn't have this, but this law comes into play when you have things like folding from tectonic forces. You can get these layers that will actually crumple and fold, but again, doesn't really happen in Minecraft. The next law I want to talk about is cross-cutting relationships, which states that younger geologic features will cut across old ones. So I have this here. So we have this diorite intrusion, you would call it. We'll talk more about igneous rocks maybe another time, but so we'll have this diorite would have come in, and you see how the diorite cleanly cuts across all of these other layers. So what this implies is in order to cut across these layers had to already be here. So you would have had, brown, regular, red, orange. This sequence of terracotta layers would have been deposited as a sedimentary rock. And then after all of these were here, the last one we see it cutting through, of course. I'll talk about that in a second. But all of these layers that it cuts through were already here. And then this diorite came in and it came in afterwards, which is why it is cutting across these layers. Now right here is a bit of a trick. You see the diorite stops cutting across right here, which would imply that the diorite came through, cut across, and then this layer was deposited after, because the diorite does not go into it. And just to throw in a little bit of lateral continuity, we can see that this diorite would have come in at this angle, and it would have gone in a sheet or a line this way, all the way through. So originally, this would have been a thicker mesa, and the diorite would have come through, cut right here, and then this would have been eroded, the diorite included. Not a perfect example, but now the last law of stratigraphy that I know of is faunal succession, and I'm chosen to explain it this way. So if you were to find a fossil like this, we find a fossil down here, and basically it states that fossils can be used to correlate time, and we find that fossil up here. So we have this sniffer egg way up here in the section, and then that sniffer egg way down there at the bottom. Through various radiometric dating or anything, if we knew from various other scientific methods that the sniffer was around from, let's just say, 300 million years ago to 100 million years ago, and we find it here, and we find it here, and again, layers completely flat, so no folding or overturning or anything weird has happened, we would know that all of these layers in between these two sniffer eggs would have had to have occurred within that time period when the sniffer was around. Make sense?
A really quick insert here from the edit. There is a law that is less official that I forgot about, but it is called the Law of Inclusions, which basically states that when a younger rock forms on top of an older rock, pieces of that older rock can be included in the younger rock. So right here, for example, where the stone is formed on top of the deep slate by the law of superposition, we assume that the stone is younger, and we can see that there are pieces of the deep slate, which we assume to be the older rock. There are pieces of the deep slate within the stone. So law of inclusion, yeah. Anyway.
Hopefully all of that made sense. This has been the laws of stratigraphy, explained by me. And now I'm going to turn it back over to me.
So when you take these laws all together, you can start to put together a pretty good idea of how it all came together. Of course, if you want to get more detailed, you'll have to know about the Earth system, rock cycle, phase diagrams, mineralogy, petrology, all stuff that we can cover in the future. But anyways, wanted to keep it real short just to save myself some time and work on some other stuff like Lore 6, which I am currently working on. This has been a brief introduction into stratigraphy, which is again the study of strata or layers. If this was helpful, please let me know. If it wasn't, let me know how I can explain it better next time. And as always, if you enjoyed, like, subscribe. Let's see if we can reach, well, I guess 10,000 subs. It sounds crazy to even say that, but yeah, thanks for watching. Always happy to clear some stuff up. Till next time.